All right, a fantastic health book today, The Culprit and the Cure. This is a primer. This is a fantastic book to hand to somebody who's just at the beginning of understanding that they need to take a little more responsibility for their bodies and for their health, and to say to them, look, science backs all this. There's no way around the principles. You've got to live the laws if you want the results. And there are all kinds of things going on in your life. You know, your emotional state, the way you feel about yourself, your self-respect and confidence, your relationships, your work, all these things are being profoundly impacted by your physical health. And so you've got to pay serious attention to it, and you've got to do your best to have the optimal health you can have for your biology and genetics. And every person can improve the way that they feel by taking better care of themselves. And this is a great book to begin. His whole argument is, of course, that there's a culprit and there's a cure, and it's lifestyle. He says, why lifestyle is the culprit behind America's poor health, and how transforming that lifestyle can be the cure. So you have way more power than you think you do. You might be having all these surgeries. You might be having all of these difficulties over here that you think are just, so often we think those things are out of our control. We go to a psychologist or a psychiatrist or a medical doctor and we get labeled, and then we take pills or we have surgeries. And so often lifestyle is not given nearly enough credit for the powerful impact it could have on transforming those things. Maybe you'd still need the pill or the surgery, but certainly you could feel a lot better, and sometimes you can avoid them. I just know so many stories of people, friends and family, and people outside of that, acquaintances and people that I've read about, that have transformed their lives by transforming their health. And so in the beginning here, he has a really good introduction, and he says that he says, you know who is on the forefront of transforming the way people are feeling, and that they're taking better care of their health? You know who's really facilitating that? The big corporations. Isn't that funny? He says, really, it's the bosses and the owners who get that they're not going to be able to run an efficient business unless their employees feel great. So they're actually taking more serious measures than just about anybody else to educate their employees on what they could be doing differently so that they could feel different and feel better and be more efficient. So then he goes into, he says, with the exception of a few programs out there that are helpful, you are left on your own. You are left with your own survival instinct to try to find the truth in a sea of marketing propaganda. That is true, and it is difficult because big things, I was thinking about the Atkins diet the other day and how popular it was for a period of time. And I was saying to Blaine, who were the people who stopped and thought, if I eat a lot of meat for a long time running, I'm going to get the short-term result. I'm going to lose weight. What's the long-term ramification going to be? What am I doing to my body, really? And how many people sat and thought about that? And how many people cared? So we cannot afford to just look on the outside, even if we're thin, even if we're our appropriate weight, and say to ourselves, guess everything's going great, How is it that people that are in really good health, that look good, or even exercise regularly, can still wind up with incredibly horrible diseases? Yes, there is genetics, but you know what? There's so much more than that. So he's got a ton of science and a ton of research into this thing, and you may probably not going to want to read it cover to cover, but it's definitely a fantastic resource. Some of his intro stuff in the why is really valuable, and he gives some really interesting stats. There's a lot of charts, there's a lot of highlights, quotes, explanations of things all throughout the book that make it very visually interesting. You can stop through and go, oh, he's talking about this now, he's talking about this. Here's one page where he's got all these charts and graphs to show you all kinds of different things. So it's very interesting that way. And of course, you can just use the table of contents to find what you want to find. He is talking all about exercise and diet, the things that we can control the easiest and the best, and he's giving a lot of good science behind it, and then some good practical advice on what you can do to change things in your own life. I still have not read it cover to cover, but I go in and reference it sometimes, and it's super helpful, and you can find all kinds of good studies that show that that we are doing a lot of this to ourselves. He says at one place that 7 out of 10 adults in the United States now are overweight or obese. So only 30% or less of the population is actually their appropriate weight. And of that 30%, what percentage of them actually have good health? They might be thin, but how healthy are they? What that means is that a quarter or less of our population are actually healthy. And it doesn't need to be that way. I did a lot of research at one point about the top diseases, the top sicknesses that were killing people. And what I found out was that 100 years ago, the top 5 killers were, what do you call them? I can't think of the word right now. Just sicknesses that you would get that would kill you. Some of them are things that we have immunized for ever since, like maybe smallpox or things like that. And those top 5 killers, what would happen to people was that they would have a pretty high quality lifestyle, and then they would get sick one day and be sick and die. What's happening today is that the top 5 killers are lifestyle diseases. Heart disease and diabetes of different sorts, etc., etc. Those are the things that are killing people. All 5 of the top 5 can be avoided or completely eradicated by lifestyle. And so we're killing ourselves. We learned to do this immunization and we thought that, that would really help. But what's happening today is that we are living a lifestyle where we get sicker younger, and then we experience a poor quality of life for a long period of time, and then it eventually kills us. We have much less energy, we have stomach aches, we have headaches, we feel tired and worn out, etc., 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 and then we might be on pills for years or shots or whatever it is, and then we finally die. So, The Culprit and the Cure. This is by Stephen G. Aldana, Ph.D., and it has some really valuable stuff in there for you, especially if you're on this crusade or you believe everything I'm saying and you want your friend to believe you to get on board, then you can definitely hand him this book and say, just read the first chapter and tell me what you think. Just one chapter, tell me what you think. Because the preface in the first chapter will go a long way towards convincing someone that they ought to change something. So that's our book for today, The Culprit and the Cure. See you next time.